What's up, everybody? I'm here with Story Art Quilting, and today we have a special guest, Leslie Ryan with Blooming Boldly Designs, and she is an amazing, amazing pattern designer, and you're going to see some of her quilts throughout this video, and she's going to teach us how she designs a pattern. That way at home you guys can understand more about the pattern designers, what they go through, and additionally how they make these beautiful works of art. And also, Leslie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into the actual designing process?
So I'm Leslie Ryan. I live in central Nebraska with my 2 kids and my husband. Been a quilter for a very long time and just really started sharing that love with everybody else.
And was it like a turning point where you're like, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to start making patterns, or has it always been that way?
I mean, it's always been on the back of my mind. Like when I was in college, there was the idea that I wanted to have a quilt shop, right? But do I really want to fulfill the items and do all the shipping
do
and
I
stuff,
actually want a quilt shop, right?
Right.
Well, let's dive on into the actual design process here. And also, I think we're going to see a couple of, I guess, examples of the quilts that you've seen here. Additionally to, it's not just that you just drew on some paper and there was a quilt, right? There's more to it. So let's dive on into this.
Well, in some of them I actually am designing, like I'll have graph paper so that I can make it balanced and whatever. But since I've learned Adobe Illustrator, I really go towards it. I tend to draw like simple shapes, or like in this particular one, I was working with the Tri-Rex, so I make that shape and then I kind of just play with it. If we zoom out, you can see some of the iterations, how many different Tri-Rexes.
Well, and let's just pause right there. These aren't failed. It's just not what you wanted, right? Because these could all be beautiful quilts as well.
And they might someday, right?
Right.
So there's one down here. So this one here is Liberty Spin, and it is half square triangles, and then we have that centerpiece that is going to be that partial seam. And then down here, it's the exact same block, like exact same layout. It's
block
just
construction, yeah.
It's just a Tri-Rex here.
Okay.
So the equilateral triangle around that center square instead of the half square triangles.
Well, and then the one next to it, let's scroll on over there. So same thing, but on point, it looks like.
This one is on point. It's the same, this purple and the white here, it is the same block. It just has a different setting, and I added some, I was kind of wanting to get a trailing effect of sorts.
Well, how often do you just start putting the design in there and you're like, this is garbage, I'm not gonna do this?
Well, so when I sit down, I never actually have the intention of, like, I don't think it's gonna be perfect, right? So what I will do is, as you can see here, like there's many different iterations, and some of these, we might go back to them someday. This one is kind of interesting. But I will do, and sometimes I will remember the elements that I designed one day and then move it over to a different quilt. So one day I was designing something and I'm like, I really liked this border effect. So I thought I would pull it over here and see if I could do something with it that day. But there's lots of times where I will just put some stuff on, and it really helps me also to see, like when I'm designing fabric, to see how those colors are going to play together and how they're going to come together as a quilt.
Well, this is kind of new school versus old school, right? Old school method, you grab a sheet of paper, you grab your fabric, and you kind of go for it, right? It's a trial and error process, especially in the very first years of So Yeah, it was like, grab that layer cake, right sides together, we're gonna make a million half square triangles, and we're gonna see what quilt it ends up with at the end, and then you're gonna write the pattern, which is a really old school way of doing it.
But there's also something freeing in that, right?
Oh, but you could never get too detailed, right? Because you would forget step 1 through 5 once you're in step 100. And so it was a lot of note taking, a lot of cutting, a lot of design. Nowadays, because we have these amazing programs, you know exactly what size those pieces are, right? Because you're programming in, this block is 2.5 by 2.5 inch square, and you're plugging it in, and you can keep copying those over. I can tell here that you're I can see why you brought in that framework there. You got a lot of empty space around the edges there, so I'm guessing that's what the framework was about, trying to put that in? It
was. I mean, there was some intention there. This one, I'm hoping it will be my next fabric collection, but the corner beam that I have used in a different pattern, Carnival Lights, I think it is, it just is fun, so I thought, let's try to use it again.
I mean, take your corner star there. You've added a different, obviously 3 sides are exactly the same, and then you have your 4th that is just a little bit different, which gives a different pop to your quilt.
And these are like the corners, do you know what a nosegay is? So that's kind of what a nosegay is. So it's kind of tying the old with the new again, the modern with the vintage. So. Well,
and I love that you brought that up, is that there's so many patterns out there, and it's repetitive, right? A lot of quilting is repetitive at this point. I want to say, I can't remember where I read it or what the exact number was, but it was like there's only 24 quilt blocks in the quilting industry, and then everything else is an iteration of that. It's exactly what you just said there, of you have a pattern that's all half square triangle, and you just change the shape of the half square triangle to something else and made a new quilt, right? And even look at these beautiful quilts behind us, right? That one right there, if we go back to your last page, I see hints of that in that.
Yes, so this one up here, it became prismatic compass.
And so what's the difference between that right there and the finished version?
So the top section is not the finished version. I believe this one actually is the finished version.
I just want everyone to see at home how many iterations of this one block were made in a different color, right? To eventually make that quilt over there, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful quilt. If you could you by chance design maybe a, what would be an easy block, like a churn dash? Is that too hard to ask?
No,
just like a simple one, so that everyone can see just kind of how the blocks come together. Because again, old school method, you're gonna go get your fabric, you're gonna just dice it up, you're gonna take notes of like, I started with a 6-inch square and I turned it into 4 half square triangles. That's old school. New school is a little bit different, and then it allows us to produce the same thing over and over again and accurately. In addition to that, whatever size, let's do
9?
a 12.
Let's do 9. I like 9.
Okay. We do a lot of, we have our own pre-cut, we call them Vegas strips. They're 6.5-inch strips for width of fabric, so everything gets jumbified. So you are making a equilateral triangle there?
I'm making my half square triangle for the corner, right?
Okay.
So I took a square, I drew a line through it, and then I split it. So now I'm just going to take, right now, I believe are they all one? No, they are not grouped. So that's one of my blocks, right?
Yep.
And this is 3 inches, so I know that it's going to have to move up -6, copy, right? And I'm just going to rotate that. And then I'm going to move them horizontally 6, copy, and then rotate again.
Which I get that most of you at home is like, this is wizardry, but all she's done is create the actual block itself and then duplicate it 4 times over and rotate it. Exactly what we would do in real life, right?
Yep. So right now I just created my other sections, right? And once I have it in place, then I don't have to do the fancy moving, but then
so she's just copying and pasting essentially, which is way easier than in real life.
There's our...
Isn't that amazing?
The really fun thing is that if you have fabric or something, then you can just drop in your swatches.
Oh, so you can color it.
Yeah, then we can test out the fabrics.
Make sure it works.
Grab a swatch from here. Now we have a pretty, and we can try out our, we'll select our background, and then we can try out our other background here. Oh, and you can see I have a hole in it, right? I forgot to do something in my middle, but I can just draw 3-inch square.
Oh, that's just not there at all because you haven't put the block in.
Yep.
I see that. Well, let me have you do this then. Duplicate that, 3 over and 4 down, and then we'll have an entire quilt here in a beautiful, and then we can change out some colors here so everyone can get the full gist of the whole quilt as if it was being finished.
So then, but if we were to group them, then I can go in here and just select that color and say, then we can just start changing out colors.
You can see how fast this can be. I'm saying fast relative to how it used to be. You probably have to make the whole quilt and then you have to test all your math out to then hopefully then get to the point of writing down instructions. Now, that is one thing that's not covered here. How do you get the instructions?
So I then take these and I also write my instructions in Adobe Illustrator.
Okay.
I have a template pattern that I use, and then I will just take these blocks and I will break them down and just start writing.
Is it possible that pattern is written without quilt being there?
Yes, so what I do is I typically will write the pattern. I will do all of the things. I will edit it to make sure that there's nothing wildly wrong with it. And then I will test it 1 or 2 times and make sure that there's no cutting errors, no like grammatical errors. Now, I will still miss some things sometimes, but...
That's the nature of that.
Yeah.
I like how we can define this in or separate this a little bit. The design aspect of quilt, or the design aspect of the quilt pattern, is purely design, right? There's no pattern writing, it's pure design. And then from there, you have to deconstruct everything and write down 2.5 inch, even more so, start with a 5-inch square, you're going to turn it into half square triangles. This is how you turn it into a half square triangle. And then from there, you're going to get this size, and it has to make sense, right? It has to be logical. And then you construct one piece of your quilt. Now, when we're talking about pattern design itself, a lot of times we get lost in the, oh, how'd you come up with that? There's so much more than just the idea or the concept of, I came up with this. It's now writing that down and getting into perfect order. So with that being said, what out of all your patterns was the hardest one to write?
Out of all of them, I would say it's either Sunny Fields or Rainbow Sparkles, because there's so many pieces in them. So the sunflowers aren't too bad, but it's those little flower clusters. If we start with the sunflower, I started with the center. We make a strip set essentially to make these centers.
You think that's just snowballed edges? Like when you stand back here? No, those are all little pieces.
Yep.
Which all need instruction, obviously, but continue.
So you make a strip set, and then you make half square triangles, right? And then the rest of it, these are going to be stitch and flip corners. And then you've got these little tiny little pieces on the end to make sure that we kind of get that round effect, right?
Yeah.
We wanted those to be a little bit longer.
So it's almost like I want to say it's called Delectable Mountain, half square triangles with your background, half square triangles with your fabric, which all has to be written, right guys? That all has to be written in our patterns because those are different, to then construct this one piece here.
Yes.
Then from there we got to go to the leaves and the flowers.
Yep, so there are 2 blocks in here, and these are turned upside down and these are right side up, right? But it's just 2 blocks and they're offset a little bit, which I think when I do design quilts, sometimes I like to make sure that the blocks don't have to line up, because there's just a little less, there's room for more error there, right?
You're fine.
There's room for more error.
I love it.
And I love to give that option, because there is absolutely nowhere in here that says this has to line up with this corner, right?
I love it.
So on these ones, there isn't a ton here. There's just my half square triangles. These bottom ones are one piece with a stitch and flip corner. So that's kind of a unit. But you're making this in like a top section, a side section, a section here, a section there, and a section here.
To be able to get this orientation, you're saying that that's what has to happen? Because
and
if not, these would be linear.
Right, and all of these pieces, so like there's spacing in between each one of these, right? All 4 of these are actually a different size.
That's what I'm saying about, it's really easy to make one of these, just in the concept of creation. You're like, oh, I'm gonna put this here, I'm gonna do this there, I want it to look like this. The written pattern, this, and all 4 of these, all are different, right? They have to be a little bit different to give the look of more of the floating look and not uniform, which makes it beautiful. Then additionally of that, we got like almost prairie point corners, which are flying geese all the way around. And just an added touch, how did that come to be?
I just felt like it needed something, right?
Okay.
It needed a little bit of space around the outside. I feel like the inside, there's just a lot going on, and it just needed somewhere to end that wasn't too harsh.
You know, putting more labor on yourself. It all has to be written as well, because anyone can throw in some flying geese, but again, it's once you put that onto paper, adds even more, and that's what makes you such an amazing designer in general, right? You didn't just stop with this centerpiece. You finished it off to make it feel like a complete look and a complete collection, which is what makes this such a very pretty quilt.
And I would say, like, when I am designing, that's partial. So sometimes I may start on paper, but I just like to be able to play with it in the computer, be able to give it that floating look to make sure I like the spacing before I commit to cutting up my pretty fabric.
Which is something that we probably should be looked at too, is that when you're cutting up your pretty fabric and you're piecing all that together, if you do it the old school method, there are mistakes. There's lots of mistakes. Why? Because that is the format in which you are making your pattern. Is you're going to cut up a little piece, sew it together, see if it works, doesn't work, recut. It's the nature of that. New school, build out the whole thing and then try it. Obviously, it's still going to be mistakes because it happens, but they're going to be a lot less, and you're not cutting up your pretty fabric. How does somebody get into this? What is your recommendation? Someone's never designed a pattern before, because you were there once, right? Anyone who's ever designed a pattern had their first one. What's the best way to just start designing a pattern or making a pattern?
It depends on your method, right? Just grab a piece of paper, grab a computer. I mean, I like to use Excel. I used to design quilts in Excel. I would say just design it and worry less about the execution and just get it to something you like. I feel like if you start something, then you can always navigate your way through it, right?
Yeah, Yeah, well, I actually love that. Everyone has a different form of doing it. You at home can do it too. Which one is the easiest way for you to do it? That's kind of up to yourself, right? If you feel like you can pull out a piece of paper and say, you know, I've got a square here, I'm gonna turn those to half square triangles, great. Start, do something, right?
And I would even say, so maybe you don't want to design the whole quilt, but maybe you like a block from this pattern and a block from this pattern. Like, put them together, make your own. There's no reason you can't.
That's awesome, because most quilts have finished sizes that are standard at this point. Now, back in the day, everything was different, but like, especially with the designers, that's one thing I've found. If I'm the one designing it, I have my preferred finished size, and like everything finishes at that size. So if you have a pattern designer that you just love, grab this pattern, the likelihood of them being able to be mix and match is probably really high. But just start. Take out a piece of paper, grab some fabric. If you're proficient on a computer, jump on your computer and start. Do something, because any form of experimentation and growth is a positive. Even if it doesn't come out the way that you wanted it to, or how you thought it should have come out, there's always room for improvement, and it still is growth. So like Prismatic is a prime example of this. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 iterations of that one block.
And those are just the ones you see, right?
Exactly.
There were many that got deleted together.
Well, I was gonna say that I love seeing people's notes on it, because they have it and they have different orientations of things on notes, and these big X's through it. Like, this is not making it to cut. With that being said, try it, guys. Make it your own. It's just always fun. Everyone has their way of doing it, and once you get known for it, that's kind of what you do. People then start looking for you, right? You do amazing work. You have just a wide variety of beautiful execution on your quilts. Try it out. You could be the next pattern designer, or maybe you can just upgrade your own stuff for yourself. And guys, with that, if you've enjoyed this week's video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Not only that, Leslie Ryan has come all the way out here. Make sure you're following her on Instagram at blooming.boldly.designs, and you can also find that down in the description below. Make sure you subscribe to her. She is going to be the next Tula Pink, in my opinion, because I think your work is absolutely amazing. And with that, guys, we'll see you on the next one.